Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of Speaking with Confidence with Kat Matson. Yes, I am Kat, and on this show, I coach business owners, public servants, corporate hippies, and humble leaders how to speak with confidence, authority, authenticity, and impact. And today on this episode, I'm going to talk about how to simplify your message so others can understand it. Because I don't know, one of the most popular questions I'm asked is how do I distill complex messages into simple messages that my audience can understand? But before I get into that, welcome back. If you are a regular listener, it's been a while since I've recorded. This is episode 134, that's 134. And the last episode, yeah, it was 133, and that was an interview episode with the fabulous Cara Lambert. It's now January 2025, and before I get into the episode, I wanted to explain to regular listeners some changes that are happening. And if you're a new listener, well, welcome. What an awesome episode for you to get started on, because this is the first of the new format of simple episodes. Yes, there is a theme. It's all about simplicity. So, regular listeners, welcome back. New listeners, welcome. It's awesome to have you here. And what am I talking about with this whole new format thing? Well, regular listeners would know that for most of last year, I had so many different interview episodes, which were awesome. I love having juicy conversations with interesting people. From a podcast perspective, though, the logistics of interview episodes are demanding. And one of the things that I realized, particularly as I hit the last quarter of last year, was I was getting tired. I was finding podcasting overwhelming, a bit daunting, and so I just procrastinated on all of them. I realized over the break that what I was procrastinating on was the logistics, the demand of finding new interviewees, of making the content relevant. And let's face it, any interview conversation, that becomes a 45-minute episode, whereas single episodes, these content-based episodes, are short, 15, 20 minutes. And it's really easy for me to fit 15 or 20 minutes into my schedule, but fitting 45 minutes for an interview plus the intro and outro, it just became demanding. So I'm trialing a new format. You know me, I don't like to commit to anything. But for the next 6 months, here's what I am experimenting with. The vast majority of these episodes will be how-to style episode. The new format for Speaking with Confidence is, as I said at the top of the show, it's coaching. I will be providing you with coaching tips, tricks, and how-tos so you can show up in your world and speak with greater authority, confidence, authenticity, and impact. So each of these solo episodes will be just that, coaching tips. Then every now and then I will host coaching episodes. If you would like a free coaching session with me, then all you have to do is click the link for free coaching session in the show notes. And that episode we record, and it becomes an episode that everybody else can learn from. Because regular listeners, you would know that I'm a massive fan of working out loud. Then every now and then, when I meet someone who is just so extraordinary that I have to have them on as a guest interview, then I'll host a guest interview podcast. So what that means for you, dear listener, is the vast majority of my episodes will be packed with tips and tricks to help you speak, to help you communicate, to help you show up in your world. Whether you're a public servant, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a corporate hippie, or whether you're a humble leader, or all of the above, because, hey, hands up, I've certainly been all of those above. In fact, I think I am. I've been all of those at one point in my life. So that's the new format of the show. So with that said, let's get into the guts of today's episode. Simplicity. I feel like actually, I don't feel like, I know for a fact, simplicity is my number one business value for 2025. How do I minimize the steps? How do I minimize the logistics? How do I minimize the drama so I can have a far easier and simpler life and business? And in thinking about simple business, I realized that simplicity is one of the key speaking techniques as well. The challenge is when we're speaking to people, when we are trying to get our message across, we are very focused on our content. In fact, it's probably one of the biggest mistakes we make when we're communicating with others. We believe that it's all about the content. If you can imagine a fraction, one of those word fractions where you've got words above and below each other with a line, one of the biggest mistakes that we make when speaking is that we prioritise, we put content over outcome and connection. We prioritise our content over our outcome and over connection. Think about it. When you have been most open to receiving new information, when you have been most open to the information that is being delivered to you, has it been the content that's been blasted at you? Has it been the intricacies? Has it been the detail? Or has it been the outcome and the connection? The connection as in the relevance, the connection with the person speaking to you, and the outcome. How relevant is it? How is this going to help me do something? Where does this fit in my life? So one of the keys to flipping that fraction and actually having our message land is simplicity. And one of the ways that we can focus on simplicity in our message is actually to stop focusing on our content and instead focus on that very thing that we tend to disregard, and that is the outcome and the content and the connection. So what do I mean? Well, first of all, we need to ask ourselves, well, what does our listener need to know about this particular piece of content that I'm currently delivering, and what's relevant to them? We often talk about what's in it for me, WIIFM, the world's most popular radio station that we're all listening to all of the time. And when we as communicators are sitting in that place of WIFM, WIIFM, we tend to focus on the content. How do I either demonstrate how good I am, how much knowledge I have, how much information I have, or how important is it for me to download all of my information? But if instead we can focus on what I call the what's in it for them, the WIFIT, the what's in it for them, what's in it for my listener. And oftentimes when we ask ourselves that, we suddenly realise, they don't need to know anywhere near as much as I thought I needed to tell them. In fact, they just need to know the very tip of the iceberg, or they just need to know the action that they need to take, or they need to know how it's going to make their lives easier. So the first tip I have for you today in making your message simpler is to focus on what's in it for your listener. What is it that they need from this particular conversation? Really closely related to that is make it relevant. One of the things that we get very frustrated with as communicators is that we are trying to, particularly for, the corporate hippies that might be listening, the people who are really desperately trying to make a positive change in the world, we focus on why people should do something. And, as soon as anybody starts shooting on you, well, you disconnect, right? Don't tell me what to do. You need to make it relevant, and you need to make it relevant to your listener's frame of reference. Where are they currently at in their life? What are they currently up to in their business? What are they currently up to in their role, in their job? I don't know why this example just popped into my head, but I was thinking about all of the IT change projects that I've ever been a part of, all of the IT system implementations. And every time I've spoken to the CIO or the change manager, they all list all of the reasons why this new system is going to be amazing for me. And I'm like, it's actually not. My current way of working works for me just fine. Why do I care about all of these bells and whistles and all of these funny things? But if instead you can make it relevant to my current reality, Kat, this new customer relationship database will help you stay in touch with your customers on a day-to-day basis. Oh, okay. That's interesting to me. That's relevant. So when you're simplifying your message, you need to really understand what's important and what's relevant to your listener. I learned all of these things, particularly the simplicity element. I learned about simplicity of communication when I was Brisbane's Chief Digital Officer. So I was working indirectly with the elected representatives of Brisbane City Council. And my role as CDO was not the IT, but instead it was the digital transformation of the city's economy. Big, highfalutin words, right? But really what I was responsible for was nurturing startups and nurturing innovation. Now, if you're listening and you have some familiarity with startups and innovation, you'll understand the importance. But for people who aren't, for let's say the elected representatives who bump into people on a day-to-day basis who are cranky about whether or not their rubbish is being collected, whether or not the lawns have been mowed, whether or not the roads are wide enough, whether or not the library services are good enough, whether or not public transport systems are enough. Talking to them about the importance of startups or innovation, not interested. They could want to be interested, but in order for me to get cut through, I needed to understand what was relevant to them today. What was the PR thing that they were dealing with today? What was the agenda that they were constantly fighting every time they showed up to a public event? Make it relevant. The other thing that I needed to do was explain it in simple layman's terms. When, for example, in the startup industry, we talk about startups being high growth businesses that scale really quickly, blah, 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 blah. That's all lovely. That's all, it's all lovely. But to an elected representative at a local level, actually what's relevant is small businesses who can start fast and can employ more people quicker. That's it. That's it. So my essence here today, when we talk about the number one tip, if you like, for making your messages, making your communications simpler, is to really connect with your listener. Stand in their shoes for a minute. You know, that saying of walk a mile in my moccasins? Stand in their position and ask yourself what's important to them, what's relevant to them, and what's the required amount of information they need. Not all of it, not necessarily the minimum amount either, but certainly not all of it. Because by definition, 9 times out of 10, when you are communicating something as a business owner, as a public servant, as a humble leader, or as a corporate hippie, you are the expert. You are the one with the expertise in the room, and you're being asked to convey enough information that somebody else can make a decision, that somebody else is informed. So you don't need to give them everything, you just need to give them enough. So I hope that gives you a hot tip for improving your communication. Now, if you would like a little bit more confidence boosting tips, then you can have a free, quite literally a free confidence boosting curiosity call with me. Because here's the thing. One of the things that I've discovered over the last 4 years of running this particular business has been that people need different things. When people say, oh, I'm a terrible public speaker, or I'm just not heard in meetings, or I really struggle to get my message across, there can be a whole lot of different causes and issues that need working. And rather than me sitting here on a podcast telling you, come along and join my course, come along and join my membership, come along and have some one-on-one coaching, do you know what I'd much rather do? I'd much rather just have a chat. Let's just have a chat. So I now host confidence boosting curiosity calls, 20 minutes, completely free. They are not a sales call. They are not a sales call. Of course, I'm going to let you know some of the ways that I can help if I can. But most importantly, I will have a conversation with you around what's getting in the way about how you show up in the world, and I'll give you some hot tips right there, right then, that you can implement as soon as we get off the call. So that, along with the free coaching call that is available if you want to have a full coaching session, so long as you make it available for the podcast, both of those links are in the show notes. So you can have a free coaching session, or you can have a confidence boosting curiosity call. The links are in the show notes. The next episode will be dropped within a week. So you can now subscribe wherever you're listening to make sure that you get notified of my next episode. But episodes this year will drop weekly. You can listen on Spotify, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer to listen to your podcasts. And one final thing before I wrap up. If you have found this episode useful, if you know of other people who would benefit from speaking tips so that they can show up more in the world and make their impact, please leave a review, please rate, or share this episode. Do you know why? Because the more people who can show up in the world, the more people who can speak with confidence, authority, and impact, then the better the world's going to be. Because I don't know about you, but the world right now needs to hear from more diverse voices. And the reason why diverse voices aren't heard is not because they're not allowed in the room. It's because they just don't have the skills yet to show up and be heard where it matters. So with all of that said, thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you again next week. And in the meantime, here's to confidence and here's to impact.